Good evening. This is the Leon Trotsky Revolutionary Newsletter Podcast, and we're with Michelle Louise Brecking.
Bicking.
Bre- Bricking.
No R. Bicking.
No, Binking. Oh, isn't there an R in it?
Closer. No R.
Sorry.
No
I've been a
worries.
little. I'll have to fix that. I've been a little distracted today.
That's okay. That's okay.
So we fixed that. We're going to talk about a Green Party candidate that is a write-in candidate at this point.
Mhm.
So how did that occur? How did you become a write-in candidate instead of being on the ballot officially?
7,500 votes, or rather signatures that were needed to place me on the ballot. To date, we're not quite sure how close we got. I want to say, with some measure of confidence, it was close to 4,000, but still not enough, even with all the volunteers that chipped
Isn't
in.
that the biggest problem with running at the level the Green Party does in most places, is that they don't have the infrastructure to get the required signatures to get on the ballot often?
Yeah, I would say that's a big deal. And then I wouldn't even say volunteers because we paid folk for their time
Mm-hmm.
to go out and get signatures, and we pay as close to a livable wage as possible. So
It's a
20, $22
time-consuming
an hour.
job.
So it's just really puts us at a disadvantage because we don't have you know the amount of people to go out and volunteer their time, essentially, even if they're getting paid a stipend.
Mm-hmm.
And in times of COVID, people are very hesitant to, touch pens and engage with folk outside of their family. So it's a very difficult situation. But we did our
But it,
best.
but it also is I mean, let's be honest. The whole system is a gatekeeping process. The 7,500 signatures. It's designed to make sure that less well-funded parties do not actually get on the ballot.
I would say so. I think that's a fair argument because no other, I mean, the Democrats and the Republicans don't have to do that, nor do the independents. They don't have to go through that extra step of rallying support. They already have a designated line and don't have to worry about it.
Right. So, I mean, why doesn't the Green Party? I mean, it's a major party. It's in almost every state. You can find it
Hmm.
on every election from school board all the way up to presidential.
Hmm.
It's about time we get this party, really on the ballot, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we're the fourth largest in Connecticut and the fourth largest in the U.S., and we're the only party that has global reaches. There's a
Mm-hmm.
Green Party in the Philippines. There's a Green Party in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Hawaii is still part of the U.S., but we're everywhere. We're everywhere.
Well, maybe that's one of the distinctions that make it a little bit harder for us to sell it in America. The idea that it is so global,
Hmm.
America's very insular and it likes to have its politics focused only on itself.
Hmm.
This worldview of the Green Party seems to, contradict certain principles and leave
Hmm.
open, ideas of, contamination from outside sources.
Hmm. That's a very dangerous precedent to set because we live in a very globalized economy. I mean,
Well,
things that are happening across the
I
globe.
didn't say it was a good idea.
Oh, not at all. I know. But to those who do think it's a good idea to remain insular, it's not really possible. I mean, most of our food is imported from outside of the country,
Mm-hmm.
and we have our debt is floated by the Chinese government. So I mean, it's just there's no way to be completely closed off from the world. We're very much involved in it,
Yeah,
and it
well,
is.
so I wanted to get into a little bit about some of your platform policies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm really interested in how you feel ranked choice voting is going to be a benefit for a party like Green.
Mm. Well, it gives us the opportunity, as well as other, libertarian, other party candidates
Mm-hmm.
that would like to be in front of registered informed voters and share what they have to offer, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And then the voters themselves, each vote counts, and whoever they choose to move on to the next stage, where two or three individuals can vie for how many votes they can receive each.
Mm-hmm.
It really makes a difference in directly seeing your impact on elections.
But let's be clear. I mean, there is the problem with the ranked choice voting is that you have to reach a threshold, 50%, otherwise your votes go to the next
Right.
choice on the ballot.
Hmm.
And for me, that's a big problem for Green Party. Sure, you might get 10, you might get 15%,
Hmm.
but you've now effectively given, a certain percentage of that over to the Democrats or the Republicans without them having to do any work on the policy
Mm,
side.
let's see.
They can say, well, I'm going to get that 5% no matter what because these people are disenfranchised Democrats voting green and their second choice will be me.
Hmm. Well, I would also like to believe that ranked choice also offers a unique opportunity for the majority of voters in the state who are unaffiliated. Um, as a base, they can change any election as they so choose. It's 39%, which is greater than the Democratic vote in state. So it would encourage, hopefully, their participation, and then they can actually sway in a lot of different ways. Which person receives the greater portion of the vote.
I understand that argument, but I'm not really won over by it because the big problem is that it seems kind of like a Sisyphean act there. You keep on hoping that they're going to change. They keep on pushing the rock up, and it always rolls back over them. They don't get their candidate in, and after a while, they just become just as disenfranchised. I mean, personally, I would like to see proportional voting occur.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're the fourth largest, that means you should have whatever that percentage of votes. You should have candidates that are actually in office at that size.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would be a system we should apply because now we're seeing results. Now people aren't getting disenfranchised like they do here and say, well, yeah, I voted 10 years straight ranked voting and my vote never got past the second round for my preferred candidate. I was still stuck with the guy I didn't really prefer or the woman I didn't really prefer in whichever case.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of my concerns, that it just leads to the same apathetic cycle that we're in now.
It's a fair concern. I really respect that, and I think we can be very creative about how we can choose, who we seek to represent us. Once there's more dialogue and there are more people, having conversations that matter to them about who is there and what's not being done and all of that. So I truly get it. Believe me. And coming from the position of underdog, I recognize how difficult it is to appeal to, those who've consistently bet on the other two horses in the race, and, the only thing that I can guarantee is that I'll be myself. All right.
Well, that's very important.
And I can stand on my own merit in terms of what I have to offer, and one would hope that's enough. For me, it's enough personally, but, as far as the voters are concerned,
I think you have a lot to offer. As I read your plan, there was a lot of really great ideas and concepts that you have in there that we really need. I mean, your plan on public transportation is tremendous. I was just going to ask you, do you see it like the Kansas City system where it's totally free?
I would like to, yeah. I mean, currently, due to COVID, in the month following it, the Governor Lamont here in Connecticut decided to make all bus transportation free, and I would like to continue that. And I'd also like to continue, other routes in and out of the state to have either some incentives for people who are local to make use of it, and encourage those who are not so local, in Springfield, Massachusetts, which is right on the border, to make use of it as well. So yeah.
Yeah. Those are your areas that come into the state.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in upstate New York, in Greene County. So when I go to Connecticut, it's usually Danbury.
Yep.
That's the closest. And I know there's a lot of interaction between Danbury and Amenia, for example, the little town. And those really close border towns right there.
Right.
That's where we got a lot of during the pandemic, a lot of Connecticut people shifted over to come to New York and those regions.
That's right. Now, it would be amazing if we actually made use of our existing, freight rail system and refurbished it to accommodate for commuter rail. And one wouldn't have to drive to Little Armenia from Danbury. They can actually catch a train that would bring them a little bit closer, and then a shuttle.
You're gonna have a tough luck on that one, because on the New York side, we pulled all the rails up to create a biking
Right.
trail system.
Right. But we did
But,
not hear. It's still here.
well, that's great, but
Hmm.
it's just you're at the border. It's a dead stop. I mean, I thought that was
Hmm.
short-sighted myself
Quite.
because these towns are becoming bedroom communities of New York City again.
Right. Right. Right.
I mean, people are being pushed out, and so
And
you know,
Connecticut is still fairly attractive because our housing stock is a lot cheaper still
mhm,
than, Midtown Manhattan and the suburbs, so you can get, pretty much more house
for your
for
money.
the dollar. Hmm.
And you have but that's the other problem is that you have to deal with the MTA, Amtrak on the other
Hmm.
side. So it's
Hmm.
two layers of one's New York, and New York never wants to put that much money into MTA for some odd reason, even though it powers the whole city.
Right.
And then you got Amtrak, which is continually under budgeted. So do you have a
Hmm.
Connecticut version of that?
No,
So you'd have to
no.
create that.
My intention is to create a Connecticut version that is actually effective, cost effective, reasonable, and benefits people in state more than any other. A lot of the plans that I've seen in the past regarding mass transit has focused on like the 95 corridor,
Right.
and
Well, that's
and or 91 going up to Massachusetts. It really doesn't actually focus on like the smaller communities that outside, around the periphery of the Quiet Corner or up in Salisbury in the
mhm,
northwest, or Pomfret in the northeast. I mean, it doesn't focus on the needs of those communities and their ability to access other parts of the state as well as move out of state should they
mhm,
choose to. I mean, I think Connecticut is really ripe for mass transit in this time because we have so many. Our demographics are so profoundly diverse.
mhm.
The problem is that it's highly concentrated in very specific areas of the state, and it would allow us to interact with each other more. To know that I can hop on a train and take my kid down to the aquarium in Mystic, um, you know, just amazing. Or to go to Old Lyme to get some ice cream. Have some of the best ice cream places down in Old Lyme.
I
You
haven't been
know,
to Old Lyme in a long time or Mystic, but
hmm
I know what you're talking about.
that's
And
right.
then there's
That's right.
Groton, which is another, you know,
Amazing.
place to go. Yes.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, the Portuguese community there is quite large.
Hmm. Hmm. So we have a very strong Russian contingent in the greater Hartford area. I mean, we're
Mm.
tremendously diverse. You don't see it. I mean, when people think of New England and particularly Connecticut, they think of highbrow, monochromatic, reserved, the land of steady habits. But we have a potpourri,
I always think of Joe Lieberman.
a potpourri, if you
Mhm.
will, of folk here. We just don't. We need to see each other. And I think mass
Yeah.
transit will really make a difference in that.
Well, seeing each other definitely helps to build the overall community
Hmm.
factor as well, and that's what's dissolving in the Northeast so much.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I'm a little disappointed. I just got back from a vacation in North Carolina,
Okay.
and now they're hostile to all things mass transit usually, except for in Charlotte, which is building a whole new line
Nice.
of affordable light rail in the
Ooh.
city.
Hmm.
So, my question is why is it that these highly Republican areas are beating us at mass transit and other things to draw in millennials who they know don't want to drive as much?
Hmm.
And we in the Northeast sit here with on our hands telling everyone we can't do it when the infrastructure is basically already there.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people over-identify with their vehicles.
Mm,
Because vehicles are still very much a sign of status.
sure.
That you're well taken care of if you're driving an Audi or a BMW, even if it's a rental. Nobody needs to know about that. So.
Yeah, I understand that perspective, but
Hmm.
when you go to New York City, and I know you're from is it Brooklyn?
I'm from Brooklyn. I was born in Manhattan. Yeah.
All right, so you know that everyone takes the MTA basically.
Hmm.
You'll see a Wall Street guy on the subway just as fast as you'll see somebody who teaches kindergarten.
That's right. And they'll be sitting right next to each other. Yeah.
Right. So
Mhm.
I mean, it seems to me there's that democratization of transportation that a mass transit system creates, which I feel is
Democracy is not
important.
sexy for some people.
No, it's not.
They like their caste. The benefits of their caste system, not even class,
Oh,
the caste system. And if they're able to show off all the toys that they acquire because of it, then they're more likely to do that. I mean, the only thing that I can think of, in my understanding of why there has been such negative press regarding having a feasible, workable mass transit system in Connecticut, is that there's a lot of contracts for road work and construction and all of that. And it's a pretty profitable business. So it makes me wonder if they have their hands in the pot in terms of influence in regards to whether rail would be,
I would say yes, because when I was in college in Louisville,
mm-hmm.
that was during the Bashir years, and when
mm-hmm.
he was shown the door, it turned out that he had been giving all his friends lucrative deals to redo the roads and everything
mm-hmm.
else.
Big money.
And so I figure it's not different anywhere else. I mean, if you have the money,
mm-hmm.
you can tweak it around and make sure that you're always getting more money from the government through proper donations.
Right.
But I mean, your plan is very innovative, I think.
I mean, on top of that, and I thank you for saying that. I really do appreciate the feedback. We have Rayathon has some presence here. We have Electric Boat. We have all these different makers, of war machines and tools of war. And my thought is that they can be repurposed into creating high-speed rail options, not just for Connecticut, but for
Electric Boat would definitely be easily enough to. I mean, they basically build submarines, so I mean, and that's just a big electric boat.
I mean, we wouldn't even have to change the way the thing is shaped. They could just put some track on, some wheels on it and make it run.
So they have all the equipment to do big, large projects.
Yes.
And Raytheon, that started out as a microwave company.
Oh, well, look where they are now.
Turns out that World War II was much better for business. They made like radio parts and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, that whole thing with Annie and Daddy Warbucks, that was like a documentary. It really wasn't just a musical.
Never thought of it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I never really watched the whole thing through. I can't stand it.
I hear you, but I know every song. I know all the motions. I know all of that stuff. So
I didn't realize he got government
Daddy
money.
Warbucks made his money from the war.
Government contract. I thought from the First World War, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that Depression era, Annie?
I believe it is Depression era. Yeah.
Yeah, so it had to be First World War, not Second. So,
but
she's that's a very interesting insight. I'll have to go watch it now all the way through. I think I haven't done that since I was a kid.
Now you need to report back.
I will.
What's your grown-up interpretation of
I just found it annoying that 80s version with I think Carol Burnett's in it, and
that's right, the one and only.
Keep on saying her as Mama's Family.
Always. And the redhead, what is her name?
Oh, I don't know, but didn't she die recently?
No, she's still alive, I think. I
know someone from the Carol Burnett show and the Mama's Family died recently.
Recently, yes. But I couldn't tell you who, but I know who you're talking about.
So I mean, I really like that. I mean, I don't think we don't talk about any kind of major infrastructure projects like that and the sustainability of them. I mean, if it's high-speed rail and you want it to be as safe as Japan's, I mean, they shut that whole railway down at like midnight, and then for the next like 6 hours, there's hundreds of guys that go through and check everything. So there's plenty of work
round the clock
to be done on these trains. So you're not going to lose, the DOT is just going to have to shift over to the rail authority, whatever you finally name it.
So very, very doable. A great opportunity to employ a lot of folks who are chronically underemployed in state, and in Connecticut, and they in respect to all of these pandemics multiple pandemics at this point. I'm sure there haven't been some that been shared with us as yet. And then walking into flu season, you have people that can sterilize and all of that. So there's a lot of different opportunities that you can get from. It's not just conductor and machinist and that sort of thing, and engineer. Yeah. So.
Well, I mean, you have those too on every train, 2 or 3
on every train. Yeah. And we have Have you ever been down to the Essex railway system down here? We have
No.
an amazing series of trains, and guys from Connecticut, please forgive me for getting my names out of order or whatnot, but we have some gorgeous old-fashioned steam trains that you can go and get tours throughout the country.
I,
I know that there was a push about 2 years ago to reinvigorate going up to, oh no, it was Fairfield County up the western side, crossing like Danbury and further north up to
oh.
Salisbury. They were trying to reinvigorate that route just for the sheer beauty of the of the experience,
Hmm.
because people are still very much you know
There's a
or it is
certain.
still very much in fashion to have dinner cars and
Mhm.
just really spend the time enjoying the scenery and taking in the scenery. So
Well, I mean, they do that in New York, up in the Adirondacks. We have a dedicated
that's right.
tourist rail line that goes, I think, somewhere in Canada. I don't know if it's Toronto. Don't quote me on that, but it
Hmm.
does cross the border, and then you could pick up another one in that area where they stop, and you could
Hmm.
take it all the way across Canada, and it goes to the Canadian Rockies, all the way out to like Banff and places like that.
Yeah,
And I don't see why Connecticut couldn't do something similar. I mean, there's amazing coastline all the way up to Maine, and that would be
phenomenal.
and
Hmm.
that's like three states that you go through
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
get there, and that would be a boon to the whole region.
That's right. That's right. So,
And
I'm intentionally going about the thought process of having interstate comments, contracts,
mhm.
and compacts to, discuss how we can mutually benefit from, tourism by
Mhm.
trail as well as by rail, you know?
I think that's what we don't do well enough in this country as states. I mean, there's too much competition between each state and not enough regional
Hmm.
cooperation,
Hmm. I agree. I
except for
agree.
like Amtrak, which is pretty much built in the 95 corridor down to Washington
Hmm.
D.C. And the only
Hmm.
reason that was done was because, well, let's be honest, politicians didn't want to have to fly because it's a pain in the neck.
Right.
So
That's
they
right. But
they
it's not
made
just a pain in the neck for them; it's a pain in the neck for all of
yeah,
us, and
it
it's
is.
it's about the greater good. So it would be really nice if we can actually make use of what we have, and just tweak it a little bit so all of us can access it more regularly. You
Well,
know.
we should. And that gets
Hmm.
me to my next point: housing. I see that you want to reuse the housing stock you already have more than just rebuild.
That's right.
I think
That's
that's
right.
very
So.
smart. I mean, most of our plans are the gentrification plans,
Hmm.
and they're always, we have to get this partner over here from this company to partner up with the state to build this, and we always know that those plans always fall short on reasonable housing because that's just not profitable enough for the corporation,
Right.
who then wants to take over the management contract
Hmm.
and and use that as a way to have that forever income coming through the housing developments that they build.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
how do you plan on to
How do I
tackling that?
feel? Yeah. So I went to my first Fair Housing Commission planning meeting over the weekend. And, Connecticut has a series of fair housing commissions. Some of them are defunct, some of them are in the process of starting, some of them are very well established, to kind of give, tenants the opportunity, like a bargaining chip in terms of, how their property is maintained and, keeping rent caps low or actually instituting rent caps and that sort of thing. So we were talking, and I had asked, and they introduced me as, candidate for governor, but I also made sure they introduced me as a concerned citizen,
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted to know, like, how could we potentially push on a local level or even a municipal level um, the idea of any new buildings being made as far as that has units,
Mm-hmm.
that 30% of them are deemed for income-based needs. Um, so that's affordable housing versus low-income housing, right? Most affordable housing that they are creating, that global these contractors are not in reach for people who are on fixed income or even with two salaries in the home. I think they had done several studies over the last 10 years about how most people cannot afford a one-bedroom apartment on one
Out of
salary.
reach are the studies, and in New York City was $34 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
I
So here in
memorized it.
Connecticut, it's $25 an hour is considered a livable wage for you to
But
afford a.
that's a very deceptive study
Hmm.
because it only does your housing
Right,
and it doesn't take into account your insurance, your
right.
food bills.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so when you get to it, you realize that no, it's more like I have to earn 45 to actually have any real lifestyle.
That's right. So they're assuming that you're not living alone, right?
Hmm.
That you have another income earner in the household.
Hmm.
So that will put you closer to 50 or over 50 in order to be able to, afford, groceries and putting gas in tank,
And that should
I just have to pay for 100 gallons of oil for
heat.
my heat here, and that was $750. You know, and
Right.
it'd be nice if that lasted me for the season, but that's not going to last me more than 2 months.
Oh, I know.
It's
And,
that
and we've been having milder winters than usual.
very mild, very mild. But I have a feeling that I was looking at the different farmers' almanacs, and they say that this winter might be a cold one. May not be a lot of snow, but it might be quite cold. So
I like the snow.
yeah, not me.
Well,
My Caribbean blood is done with snow, sir. I can't.
I really do.
Yeah, well, you can be the snow, but you can take the snow and just give me the sunshine. I could do an even split right there.
But but yeah, I mean, we do have to look at the whole housing issue, not just the rent side. I mean, and
Right.
that's why those studies, as important as they are, people think, oh well, you're making $18 an hour, you can afford your apartment, but that's it. That's all I could afford.
Mm-hmm.
Or you make 20, like if you pay $20 an hour in my county, Greene County, right? You're supposed to be able to get a
Mm-hmm.
1-bedroom apartment. And yeah, that's true, but you can't get your apartment insurance, your car insurance, and all that other stuff. So we really have to look at all this as a holistic principle and see what housing really does to center the whole community. And in New York, we have cooperative housing.
Mm.
You probably remember those.
I do. I do.
I mean, do
I
they
was
have
actually
anything like
talking
that in
to some
Connecticut?
folks at the commission about doing like a food co-op.
Hmm.
Um, and they said, "Oh, well, we need to talk." I said, "We definitely need to talk because I do have experience with that as well."
Need
Where
both
you
of
take
those.
ownership and yeah, definitely. There's definitely room for that.
I mean, do you have that in your plan? I didn't see it there.
It's not in the plan specifically, but it's something that I've had experience with personally because I was many moons ago, actually not that many moons. I was interested in opening a food co-op in Springfield,
Hmm.
Massachusetts, where I worked for
Surprisingly,
7 years.
it's
So
surprisingly difficult to open a co-op.
it can, and even though you reach out to the chains to consider opening a smaller version of themselves in neighborhoods that they need them, they're less likely to do that. But boy, they put up a fight when they hear that you're trying to install a food co-op. You'll get all kind of representatives coming to look at your data and say this doesn't make any sense and this thing and the other. It's messy. And when you're working with groups of people who have all the best intentions but different roads to get there, you have to have a really solid series of facilitators. Otherwise, they'll just devolve into a bunch of arguments and nobody gets
It
anywhere.
will. It will. But even from just getting actually, some states don't even really recognize cooperatives
Mm-hmm.
as legal entities.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to do these backward, open it up as an LLC and then
Mm-hmm.
add everyone into this other structure into it. Yeah, it's not easy, but it can be done,
Mm-hmm. Can
and
be done, and it can be very rewarding, extremely
and it should
rewarding
be
to
done.
know. Yeah, to know that you own,
Hmm.
a piece of the mechanics of the thing that you need in your community. So.
And let's just
Mhm.
face it. I mean, if we remove cooperatives out of what they've become, which is the gentrification, I mean, everywhere you see cooperatives in New York right now, it's basically in a town that's been taken over by people from Brooklyn.
Mm,
And the prices aren't lower like they should
unfortunately,
be. I mean, they
yeah, they
should be
should be.
they should
Mm,
be lower. I mean, that's the idea of a cooperative, I
mm,
mean, you band together, work out deals with the local farmers, and you create the market that value, and people get the prices they want. But
mhm,
here in New York, I mean, all these cooperatives turn out to be like these little farm stores in these niche market areas, and
mm.
and the price is always too high. So they don't really benefit, the overall community unless it's one of these communities that's been gentrified. Has that been going on in Connecticut as well?
In my personal experience, not so much. I mean, we have Fiddleheads Co-op. We have, different co-ops that are actually very competitive in terms of the
Hmm.
other chains, and you get a wide variety. It's not just a few
I,
items that are cute or in
hmm.
style or in vogue. So you can shop in one place. I mean, that's really important for a lot of families, myself included, where you can go and get all of your produce, all of your meats, all of your, everything that you need. Your non-perishables in one stop, and
Hmm.
you don't have to go bargain hunting like we used to go back in the day. Like, okay, supermarket Key Food has 10 cents off of this brand of beans, whereas what was it? Seatown has it at 20 cents.
Hmm.
So there's no need to go bargain hunting because the bargains are right there. Another thing that I liked about Fiddleheads in particular too is that you have this. They have skin in the game. Like they're rooted in community. They're very much involved with
Hmm.
events and very open to engaging with members of the public and all of that stuff, which is really incredible, considering. And another thing that's as good for visual
Hmm.
effects is that you see Black and brown people in the store. You know.
Yeah, that's one thing you won't see in the co-ops that I know of unless they're very wealthy. I mean, these are pretty much white gentrification
Right.
locations,
Right.
and that's problematic to
It
say
is
the
very
least.
problematic, yeah. I mean, if you're in a neighborhood, you should look like the neighborhood, right?
Hmm. Well,
Um,
upstate New York is pretty white. I mean,
hmm
demographically speaking, we're just white, but it doesn't represent any of what small groups we do have.
that's right. That's right.
Except for maybe like the IGA. That's our biggest like cooperative, the Independent Grocers
I
Association.
remember IGA. They don't have IGA up here, but I remember
Well, there's
IGA.
one right on your border, actually.
Is that
In
right?
yes,
Okay.
it'll be right. Yeah, it's what town is it? I'll have to think of the town. I just saw it. I was out that
That's
way.
right. hmm
I collect all these little tidbits for
That's
later
cool.
use.
That's really cool. I have not seen that in forever.
Right. I mean,
Mhm.
and that's and they're not technically a cooperative, but they're the closest we really have to a cooperative that's
Got
a
it.
major supermarket.
hmm
Otherwise, what we have are these very little niche stores that have a lot of overpriced stuff.
Yeah. 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 I believe it. I believe it. So there's so much to be had, when communities band together and decide for
Mhm.
themselves that they want to open their own supermarket or to create
Right.
their own senior housing. I mean, it really, there's a huge sense of pride
Right.
in making those moves and should be supported at all costs. And I really consider that a priority. Um,
Have you ever read anything about like the cooperative movements in Louisiana?
I've heard, but
I
I have
mean,
not read in specifically. But yeah, I've
later
heard.
I'll email you a really great book,
Ooh, please do.
and it's all about the cooperative movements, and it's just impressive to see
Mm,
what especially the communities of color did during
mm-hmm,
some of the most racially divisive periods in America's history.
mm-hmm.
I mean, they basically built up any kind of safety net that city had during anything in the 30s and 40s.
Yeah, I believe it.
And and it came back in Katrina. Everyone thinks that it was the money from outside that rebuilt. No, that
No, it's the
all
people there. Yeah, it was the
they
people
rebuilt
there.
it themselves.
Yeah.
Even though Jindal and other governors were pushing for these large contracts to go to outside companies,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what we need more up here. I mean, we have a lot of outside companies coming into our areas, but they don't really produce anything
Yeah.
or sustain anything. For example,
Yeah.
in my town, we have this new boutique hotel called the Wilder,
Mm.
and they have locations in California and Ocean City, Baltimore,
Okay.
Maryland. I mean, and now Wyndham, New York,
Okay.
and they put a lot of money in,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a hotel that has maybe 100 staff at tops, and that's really being generous.
Mm.
None of the contractors that work in our area were a part of the
Right.
project. They
Yeah.
were all outside people from cities like Poughkeepsie,
Mm.
and there wasn't really anything to do with this community. So that it didn't bring any money in the first place. It's bringing people in, but it has its own restaurant, and its own little day spa.
Mm,
So they're not going to be likely to go out to the little day spas that we have here.
right.
They probably, I mean, they're going to get their breakfast at the hotel. And so that's all self-contained. So what we're looking at is low minimum wage salaries being generated by this process. What's going to be your response to those kind of things that are happening?
Well, I am all for a business that wants to come and relocate to Connecticut,
Mm-hmm.
so long as there is a measurable benefit for the most amount of people, so long as the initial contracts for
Mm-hmm.
labor and building start with us, right? Because it's here.
Okay.
I know it's been a policy of offering these outrageous tax benefits for
Mm-hmm.
businesses just to keep them here, and they still turn around and leave.
Oh yeah,
Um,
Walmart is a great example of
Walmart is
that.
a huge, yes, yes, they have a habit of doing that, and disregarding whole communities that work there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I remember reading something about how Walmart is the largest recipient of subsidized income because a lot of the people who work there are on supplemental nutrition assistance program, what we called SNAP back in the day. I mean, food stamps back in the day.
Snap.
Um, yeah, yeah. And I remember those stamps. I remember you actually had them stamped. You had to line them up
Oh
properly.
yeah, that was another case of
Nightmare.
trying to embarrass you.
Yes, and because you'll be standing there at the register, going through your booklet and trying to make sure that you're doing everything, and then people will be huffing and puffing
Well,
behind you.
they
It
had
was
two kinds.
intentional.
They had ones that you could use for certain products and ones that you could use for other products.
Others, yep,
So you
yep.
always had, yeah.
It was intentional,
Oh,
right? It
of
was
course it
absolutely
was.
intentional.
Nixon made it
Um,
that way on purpose,
yeah.
so that he.
So as a foster mother, I was eligible for both SNAP and WIC,
Mhm,
Women, Infant, and Children's Program for the two kids, because most of the people who are in poverty or suffering from chronic
mhm,
food insecurity are actually children, right?
mhm,
So the children were eligible for these benefits, and thankfully by that time, and that was about 10 years ago, we had gotten a card that looked almost identical to a credit card. You couldn't tell,
mhm.
right? So it made it a lot
Mm,
easier, and you didn't have to go
made
and
it more
figure out
discreet too.
a lot more discreet. Yeah, but you can get through your distraction, your distractions. They work can be kind of distracting, but you can get through your transactions with a
Mhm,
lot more ease. So it would be a healthy balance of ensuring that businesses benefit that are here on the arrival of other businesses that are seeking to create a physical presence here.
mhm,
One of my biggest concerns, and this also came up at the Fair Housing Commission meeting, is that we have a lot of out-of-state landlords that are buying up properties, and not just out-of-state landlords, but companies themselves that are buying up properties in the area and jacking up housing prices, which makes
mhm,
it impossible for families to afford even the
mhm,
smallest of abodes for the family. But there's been no precedent to kind of stave off these folks from essentially being predatory
mhm,
in the housing market. You know, so there was we were thinking about the possibility of adding some particular language to zoning rights and privileges to make sure that that doesn't happen in terms of building new properties, and then for those that
mhm,
are existing, um, to really encourage people who are seeking to buy
mhm,
to have a physical presence here.
mhm,
So you can't have your office in Rhode Island
mhm.
and own 6 and 7 properties here. You know what I mean? You have to
Yeah,
have physical staff presence with office hours, and one of my inspectors can come through and talk to a property
mhm,
manager and go and do on-site visits, and
mhm.
there shouldn't be any pushback whatsoever.
Well, I think that's a good idea, but I think you also have to look at the other factor that these large companies are using. They're automating the actual pricing system because they've discovered that
Yes,
people are too kind in their
yes,
words, show too much empathy. So are
yes.
you going to try and remove that? Are they going to have to, have more actual people that actually deal with the clients that rent the homes?
Yes. So I learned that, everything is dealt with, as far as housing is by square footage. And
Hmm.
they set the rates for the square footage. Like there's no standard, right?
Hmm.
So I would have to really discuss with a set of lawyers, like how do we create one here and fix the rate so that
And a
we know.
reporting system, because that's how they claim the system works, is that, oh, well, they didn't like having to call their neighbors and, try and pretend that they're going to rent a piece of property from to get the idea of the market value.
Yes, absolutely foolish. I want Connecticut to establish a market value, and folks will have to adhere to it in order to do business here.
Well, that'd be very good. I mean, I think it's going to get a
Mhm.
lot of pushback.
I'm a tough one. I can't be easily dissuaded.
Oh, I didn't think you were going to be easily dissuaded. Just for saying that's not going to be a popular program.
Oh no, it won't.
I mean, for the people that are renting, it's going to be completely popular because it
And
finally
that's what
makes the
matters the
rent
most.
makes it fair. For the landlords, oh my God, that's going to be downright a cry for a coup in the
Oh
state.
well, it's been tried many a times. We tried
Yes,
it. They tried it in January 6th, and that still didn't work out. So
true.
that's okay. That's okay. I mean, I don't see room to bargain when people's lives are at stake. And if there's any question of housing insecurity, then
Mhm.
everything else that comes behind it, food security, job security, all of those things are in jeopardy. You know, so I advocate for a housing first model.
It
In
sounds
this
like your
country.
plan is pretty much a holistic view of the basic necessities
Yes,
becoming, actually accessible.
yes, because
And
that lines up well with my training as a clinical social worker. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The base part of the base of the pyramid is that you meet someone's basic needs where they are.
Mhm.
Food, shelter, connection
Mhm.
is also important.
Right.
Once you have that secure, then you're able to move up another ladder to
Mhm.
actually address the other issues that the person has identified as important. But you can't do anything unless the most basic needs are
Oh,
taken care of.
most definitely. And the line of access, I mean, that people talk about is literally nonsense.
Right.
You don't have access unless you actually really have the ability to achieve the goal.
Right.
I mean, saying that I have access because I can go into a dentist and find out what the price is if I don't have insurance and I can't afford it is
Mhm.
not access.
It's not access.
That's
Right.
nothing. That's just finding out the price.
Right. Right.
But I mean, we push that too hard in this country. That idea of you have access. You went there and you found out the price and you can't afford it. Sorry.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
was going to get on the next topic. Now, the Green Party is very big on marijuana legalization.
hmm Not just
That's
marijuana, but cannabis.
cannabis, and that's fine. I have no problem with it. But I think our problem is that we're selling it as this magical cure all.
Mm,
I mean, if you listen carefully, people will tell you that it's going to correct income inequality in
mm.
communities. It's going to foster, entrepreneurship in areas that never had it before. And I just don't buy the argument. What do you think?
I think it's very dangerous to assume that any one thing is going to be the miracle that wipes away all kinds of income inequality and that sort of thing. I think cannabis has a great market, both industrial hemp and
Mm-hmm.
marijuana. I think that there are a lot of possibilities, and especially reinvestment in the communities that suffer the most from the war on drugs
Mm-hmm.
and the war on crime. However, to make it seem like it's a cure-all is very dangerous, incredibly dangerous.
I also
I'm
think,
supportive, but I don't necessarily view it as such.
so you have basically the same view I do, that you need to have a strong support system that goes into these communities that have been affected by drug abuse so
Yes.
much. And you
hmm
first have to have the programs, because my mother was in prevention, drug education prevention. So I've
hmm
heard a lot about this and I've been to a lot of these things.
hmm
These communities, yes, they need jobs, but if you don't get the addiction problem under control, this is just going to be a pipeline from working at the hemp store, taking 50% of your salary and putting it back into the owner's pocket. It's like the
hmm
company store with a minor in the 1900s.
Right.
And we need to
Yeah.
get that under control first and then open up. I mean, we have to have that foundation, I think, in place as
Mhm.
well as the legalization.
Yeah, oddly enough, working as a clinician, I have some experience working with dually diagnosed clients, people who have active
Sure.
substance disorders or early on in their recovery, as well as mental health challenges, right?
Mhm.
The greater majority, I would say over 90% of those persons who were suffering from substance abuse related issues,
I have a mental
was
issue.
related to alcohol. No, not necessarily dual diagnosis, but most of the substance release related issues that I dealt with in my time as a clinician was related to alcohol.
Well, alcohol
Second to that
number one.
was second to that was prescription drugs.
I agree. My mother found that most of it was there was a dual diagnosis, usually in almost every case of strong addiction,
Hmm. Hmm.
that they had
Well,
that they were self-medicating with,
exactly. Perfectly said. That's what they were doing. They were self-medicating. So
and
if you have bouts of psychosis
mhm,
and you can't afford, you know what I mean? You can't afford to get the legal drug, you know,
right.
you can go and get the off-market, rendition of it on the street
Mhm,
that does
you're
the
good.
same thing, if not better, for you. So you believe in that moment, right?
Yeah,
Um,
and that's what I'm talking about. That we need the strong mental health, we need the strong addiction,
Absolutely.
services before we start just going full bore into this, legalization process, because we're woefully unprepared for it, I think.
I believe so as well. I think there's always room for more clinicians in our schools as
Mhm,
well as in our workplaces, and who really have that experience, trauma informed experience to deal with a variety of issues. Um, I also recall that for my patients that were active marijuana users, they were using it for very specific reasons: to sleep or to
mhm.
eat. For some people, it helps them
Yeah.
rest enough,
Mhm,
that they can actually get a full night's sleep. And I had quite a few that just had no appetite, you know. So they
no,
would use, sativa or something in order to get their appetite up.
no, there are some useful properties of it,
Oh yeah, oh
but
yeah.
they can't be overstated into this like snake oil salesman routine that we're starting to see on the left.
Correct. And the way I approached it was this. I said, okay, I understand that you're using the marijuana to say to help you sleep or for your appetite.
Or
But it's
pain.
it's the for pain
Mhm,
management, all of those things, all are very relevant, right?
mhm,
Because you want to believe people when they say they're in pain, whether it's emotional or physical.
mhm. They
My
usually
thing
are.
is, do you have any other resources
Mhm,
outside of marijuana? And if the
mhm,
answer is no, I say, well, that is problematic.
mhm,
That is truly problematic because whether you're telling me that you're relying on this one thing and there's nothing else that you have going for you, we need to work on the other stuff.
mhm. True.
If
We
that
need
means
the.
building you a support network, if it means getting you job training, if it means, help looking at the other aspects of your life that's been perpetually stressful for you, that's
Mhm.
what we need to pay attention to.
We need
Yeah.
all of that, and that's the mental health aspect that we're so
Correct.
lacking on so many levels.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
mean, we can't just throw, all right, well, we legalize marijuana, it's fine for you, go do your own thing, and then wonder why these people are still in pain, still in trouble,
Right.
still
That's,
not progressing the way we think they should. Well, it's because,
hmm
like you said, they don't have a foundation to
that's
work
right.
from.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, I
That's,
would go as far as to legalize all the drugs. I think it's a point. The war on drugs
I,
is a waste of
I,
time.
I think so too. I think so too. I think
We
it's perfectly rational in this day and age. Yeah.
we know that prevention education and actual mental health services really do better jobs than prison.
Yes.
And I work in a lot of prisons. I have an outside company besides this, and I do
Hmm.
services there. And I will tell you, there's no one getting any treatment in prisons.
No, prison was never meant to rehabilitate anyone. In fact, it actually makes them a more hardened criminal in some cases.
I do a lot of work with
People
the with the OCFS,
hmm
and there are some really sadistic people that are there that work as the
that
prison
work there.
guard. Yeah,
I can believe it. Yeah. Sorry to hear that you've seen
and you
that.
and you wonder. I mean, guys that like, yeah, I love to punch this kid or that kid. I think to myself, you're talking about a 12-year-old who was beaten by probably their stepfather or whatever else, and that's why
Hmm.
he has a problem. What's your problem? You should probably
What's your
have been in
problem?
here with him.
Yeah, yeah. He was probably beaten by his stepfather,
That's
just
right.
cycle of violence.
I mean,
Hmm.
it is just disturbing to listen to them
Hmm.
and see them, and you think to yourself, there's got to be a better method. So, where do you come down on like criminal? On the criminal justice side, since Democrats across the board are going hard on crime now, all of a sudden.
Which will prove nothing. Any war on concepts never goes anywhere. War on drugs, war on crime, war on anything
Hmm.
doesn't actually make the situation any better. It makes it a whole lot worse for a lot more people. I'm a believer in restorative justice, so letting the community in which the person or the child came out of
Mhm.
really be involved in helping that person chart a better way for themselves. I don't think the
Okay.
police should be involved whatsoever, other than creating like a physical space, if possible, as
Mhm.
long as it's neutral and the community accepts it as such. You know, because sometimes some of these police precincts have these really nice, high-tech spaces that you can access as members of the community, right, for no cost. That is the only exception I would see for police involvement in cases like that. But a
Hmm.
lot of the cases that, you know, for minor infractions, first time offenders could be dealt with at the community level before it evolves into something else, you know. So it means that there has to be a lot of training, a lot of support for community members that feel called to that, you
Hmm.
know, as well as the institutions that have been traditionally involved in Black and Brown communities, including the church,
Hmm.
including mom and pop businesses, you know, folk who actually live and work there for a living. I mean, those are the ones that need to be at the table in helping find a better way than
So you're
you know.
seeing more of a
A lot
community.
of
When
things.
you say restorative justice, you're looking at okay, some kid breaks a window in
Mm-hmm.
the store.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of like calling the cops, the community gets together
Yep.
and says, "Okay, you got to fix that window you broke, and you got to wash like 100 of these other windows in the town."
Correct. And the
And
owner of the store agrees with it, and if the parents of the kid
Mhm.
are there, and the teachers, you know, one particular
Mhm.
teacher or more teachers that has a good relationship, a good rapport with the
Mhm.
student
And
is
then
there.
hopefully, as the kid goes through this process,
Hmm.
everyone's telling them, well, you don't have to be, you can take out your anger in better ways. There's
Hmm.
counseling that goes along, and
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, I understand that model. I just was trying to explain it to maybe some people who weren't as
Who
clear.
weren't aware. Absolutely correct. Absolutely
Well,
correct.
I think it's a
No
great
one is
model.
unreachable. No one is unreachable.
I think it's a great model because
Hmm.
we have too many of these kids in detention centers that I've been to,
Hmm.
and they're they're not doing these kids any benefit.
No, unfortunately.
Not with the security guards that I know from the places, not with management that doesn't really care. I mean, and in New York we had that big fiasco where Cuomo decided to be tough on 16-year-olds and stuck them in prison with 21-year-olds. Of course they're going to get beaten to a pulp.
Nightmare. Absolutely nightmare.
And we need to. I mean, that was the most asinine thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, tough love doesn't really work as well as people think it does. It's a great byline, but love works, not just
Mm.
tough love.
No,
you
I
know,
don't
you
know. I think that community justice that's a really effective form of tough love. I mean, it
it
has
can be. It can be.
repercussions. It's not weak.
Mm-mm.
I mean, the community gets something out of it that's better.
Mm-hmm.
You award them as the person is doing something that's helping. You're saying, look, it's not just yeah. It started off that first window you broke was repayment. Now you're doing this for yourself to
Yeah.
build your community ties.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a much better format.
Yeah, yeah. The reason why I didn't think of it as tough love, because when I think of tough love, I think of, someone, screaming into a child's face saying that if you don't
Yeah, I
shape
know.
up, you're going to end up as such and such who's
Mhm.
doing 30 in lockup, That's not the point. It's more of we are here for you
Mhm.
and we want you to be a better person as well as take care of yourself and be a valued member of this community. That sounds a little bit different. That
Yeah, but
sounds a little bit different.
it's different, but it's definitely a
Mhm.
much tougher thing to do.
Oh, it might be one of the toughest things that someone would have to face, especially if it's not like a 13 or 15-year-old, but a 35-year-old, you
Yeah.
know, who has been drifting on the outskirts of a community for
Mhm.
years and may not have any connections whatsoever. That
Mhm.
is incredibly difficult to say, okay, I really do want to make something of myself. You know,
Mhm.
I
So
really
that's why
do
I was calling
value
it tough love, is because the act is so much more difficult to do.
it. It is tremendously difficult.
It's not like that stupid 1970s, video with the criminals. I can't remember the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, just right up in your face,
Yeah, that's
like,
right.
you're gonna
This is
die,
prison.
kid. Yeah,
Most
yeah,
kids, I mean, just laugh that off and say, "Well, whatever."
pretty much. Pretty much. You can raise a child's tolerance to that sort of
Mhm.
nonsense pretty quickly, but you really challenge them when you bringing other people that they do have some measure of value for. Like I still remember my fifth grade teacher at 45 as one of the most important people in my life, and how I frame my whole existence comes from her. And my
Wow.
fourth grade teacher, who was also my eighth grade teacher, who I'm still in touch with on Facebook,
Wow.
you know, has really, I told her I would not be the woman I am
Mhm.
today if it wasn't for her. All it takes is one.
It does. It does. Now, if I remember correctly from the last program you did, you went to Catholic school like I did.
I sure did.
Yeah.
Age 3 in preschool, daycare, right up until high school. I thought about
Wow.
becoming a nun and going to Loyola University.
Wow.
That's how serious I was.
I never was that serious.
No, it hit me hard, man. I was dedicated. I'm in the process of filling out my application to Yale Divinity School as we speak.
Oh,
So the
wow.
desire, yeah, the
Theology?
desire is still there. Divinity studies. Yeah.
Fantastic. That's a great program.
Hmm. We'll see if I'm good enough for old Yale.
I think you will be.
Hope so. Hope so.
What do you specialize in?
They have a religion and ecology major,
Oh, wow.
and I like that combination because I have, I wouldn't say I'm an eco-justice warrior, but I'm damn close, Um, it's one of the party tenets. It's one of the things that I've always, thought of. Like I want to give a world to our children and our great grandchildren. And
Yeah.
at this rate, it doesn't seem like it's very probable, but we still have the opportunity to make a whole world of difference. So yeah, religion and ecology would be a major.
Wow.
Hmm.
I was a philosophy major.
Look at you.
Yeah. Well, still waiting for those professors to die off to give me a shot at a job.
I know. They'll be exiting in the next 5 years, so I think you can.
I know I had pretty young ones. I'm out of luck.
The old heads are on their way out. I think
That's
you
right.
can give them a run for the money. I really do think
Hopefully. But I was going to say this. So that's fascinating. So do you feel that that the Green Party represents the best mix of ecology and open, secular thoughts? And
Yes, I do believe so. I mean, it's what attracted me to it because I wanted something that combined, my understanding of commitment to others on just not a local level, but a planetary level.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah, I really
I
wanted
just
to
don't know if you're going to be able to get too much done on the planetary level as a governor.
Oh, but I can still, share my thoughts
You can
and
share your
collaborate
thoughts,
with
but
others.
you might want to stay away from trying to do any treaties. They kind of frown on that in the
Oh,
Constitution.
they do, don't they? Don't they? That would be pretty problematic. I can see, the FBI and the CIA and whoever they send my way, having some questions for me.
And that was what I asked you. That was what I was curious about. I was like, I hope she does. I mean, sure. I mean, even Bush had the Taliban over, but it was just a meet and greet.
It was just a meet and greet. Yes, yes. All about the meet and greets. We
An
actually had
unusual meet and greet, though. I mean, he picked the Taliban of all people to have come to Houston.
Well, Cuba came to us here in Connecticut. We had our first
Yeah,
delegation
but Cuba
from
makes more sense.
Cuba. It does in a lot of ways. So I'll be leading the first delegation from the Green Party here in Connecticut to Cuba next year.
Can you go still? I mean, or do you have to go the circuitous route through Canada again and then?
Yes, sir.
See, I don't understand that. I don't understand why Biden hasn't gotten rid of that.
It's not profitable enough to get rid of it.
I guess not. I mean, we got to stop trying. I mean, obviously, Cuba's here to stay.
Yes.
So try to make peace with it and join it. I mean,
and so is Haiti, and so is Venezuela.
Well, Haiti's a whole different problem that we're apparently sending in an intervention force. That has never worked out. Didn't work out in 95. Didn't work out in 1915.
It will never work out. It will never.
And I can't understand why the Clintons didn't get more blowback on that one. 2010. They bought up all the beachfront property and then just let it just sit there.
Yep.
I don't know what they were waiting for exactly.
Cool.
Something happened. I mean, they wanted something to happen to make it more profitable for them to put up hotels and turn it into the next,
Riviera
Aruba.
In Haiti, yeah, the Haitian Riviera. I want to know what Bill Gates is doing with all our farmland. I'm waiting for that shoe to drop, and it hasn't yet.
Well, cornering the market on food production. I shouldn't say food production because most of it isn't really for food,
No,
but for the
we get
feedstock.
most
I
of our
mean, it's
food
all
abroad.
corn he's growing, so it's my
Right.
favorite: Pepsi,
Yep.
batteries,
Mhm.
feedstock for
Mhm.
animals. I
Mhm.
mean, and he has like what 260,000 acres, I believe, right
He's the,
now.
he's the largest landowner in the country.
I mean, that's absurd. There should be no way that anyone should own
There
that much
should be
land.
no way. There should be no way.
I
No
mean,
way.
he's. I mean, but Ted Turner's no slouch either,
Correct. Correct. Correct.
and Warren Buffett.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, they take the taxes out of this stuff. They get to rent the
Mhm.
property to
Mhm.
farmers.
Mhm.
They get to control the resource that it
Yep.
grows
Yep.
by adjusting the rents that they rent to the farmers.
It makes me wonder if stewardship of lands by First Nations people is a way to get around that. Not to say that, First Nations folk have not dealt with their own nonsense in terms of broken treaties and land infringement and, all of that, but to have a greater level of jurisdiction
Well, I
would be
think
really
that
helpful.
the only question I have with that is, are you really going to see people get on board with that idea? I mean, we don't like the idea of someone else being able to tell. I mean, unless you live in a housing association for some odd reason, we're perfectly fine with that. But the very notion that someone might say, "Nope, you should probably not do that," is is considered antithetical to everything that we stand for, unless it's in a
Well,
housing
everything that
association.
we stand for is basically propaganda, and you know that
Well,
better
that's
than I
true, but I mean, but people believe it when it comes down to that. I mean, if you
do.
told
It
a
sure
bunch of
does.
Midwestern farmers that a guy named Running Wolf is going to be telling them how much corn they can grow this year and how much they have to plant something that's actually is good for the environment, I think that's going to go over like a lead balloon.
It might.
But I
It
mean, I like
might.
the idea.
It was
Um,
just a thought. I mean, I have a lot of thoughts.
I've always thought that we need to get indigenous people more involved in the government and not
If
in.
they so choose, yes, if they so
Well, I
chose.
mean, why wouldn't you choose?
Well,
I'm
being
not talking about
told,
Democrat. I'm not talking about being like a Democrat. I'm talking about like their reservation elects their actual representatives, and they just show up, and they have their own seats. They have their 2 senators and a number of representatives
hmm
because we treat them as basically micronations,
in some
independently
ways,
in some ways.
ways,
So
in other
they should
ways,
be able to
treat
get
them as second
uh,
class, third class citizens.
right. So they
Yeah,
should be able to get 2 senators for each reservation and two and whatever number of a proportional amount of representatives.
I would wholeheartedly support that.
And then there you go. And then you're going to see a real reshaping of things.
That would be ideal. I mean, I'm thinking just solely in terms of land stewardship, and I know it's been tinkered with in Oklahoma and
Has it
and other
worked?
places around the world to some degree. To some degree, I have to do more research before I can actually feel comfortable in, making an argument one way or the other. But
Because I know
the
the big thing.
possibilities there.
I know, like you have the what is it? Is that casino on Native American land in
It is
Connecticut?
both of them. Yeah,
Both of them.
Nantucket,
And
Pequot, and the
Fox
yeah,
Run,
Foxwoods.
Foxwoods. That's it.
hmm hmm
And that's what they did up in our areas in the Onondaga Reservation out in
hmm
the put up a big casino, and to me that was probably a poor use of things because it hasn't really helped out too much. Has it been better in Connecticut?
I think it's a mixed bag. I respect sovereign nations, desire to do what they so choose on their
Oh,
own in their own
sure.
territory. So it's not my place to even argue one way or the other.
I think we can all have opinion about it. I mean,
Yeah, we could totally have an opinion.
I have opinion about what Russia does. It doesn't mean that you don't have to take it.
Not going to see you running out there on the battlefront with a loaded musket, I'm sure. Um, but I really wish more was done in terms of representation. Like you don't have that much representation um, outside of some slim business sectors of First Nations people here,
Right.
and I think that's terrible. I think
That
that's
is,
absolutely terrible.
and so that's why I think that they need to get into the actual. I mean, every level of government has to have
Yes.
these. If your town I mean, their town has to be integrated into the state level.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I
that
think
way.
we're well overdue for a First Nations president, frankly, or an Asian president. Um, you know, or a black woman for that matter. I'm not doing it, but somebody can. I think I'm good
I
with
think
that.
we'll see a black woman before we see a First Nations.
Possibly,
Unfortunately,
possibly.
I just don't think. I've been out to the west, and the racism is pretty
Oh,
hard still. You
hmm
know, and you think to yourself, what do you think you are, General Custer, still out here? I
yeah.
mean,
Well, I think some people do really believe that they're
that's right.
they're holding the line down for I
Hmm.
don't know whiteness. I have no idea what the rallying cry is, but yeah.
Which again makes me wonder about the whole anti-imperialist. I mean, how far do these so-called anti-imperialists really go? I mean, are they going to
Mhm.
accept the, Native Americans actually having not just a democratic candidate choice, but having their own people from the reservation actually representing them in state government? I mean, that's a far cry.
Yeah, but it would be so amazing.
It would be.
Because I know there's still reservations that don't have like running water,
Oh
access to
yes,
running water
the
in
Navajo,
2022. Yep.
the Navajo reservation in Arizona is,
Mm-hmm.
and the poorest one is the one in South Dakota. I'll think of it. I
Yeah,
mean, like
yeah,
$9,000. Well, the last time I checked was the average salary.
yep. And it's an oil-rich state, on top of that, so
Mhm.
it doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. It does work in some cases because we look at Alaska, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the only way they actually got the oil pipeline to go through was by creating the Alaskan Wealth Foundation fund,
Mm-hmm.
and every native person gets 1,500, just like every white person gets $1,500. I think, or $2,000 a year, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
It fluctuates depending on oil.
Right, right, right.
But
No, it's terrific.
I mean, there's a state that actually has made it work
Mm-hmm.
on some level. I mean, at least for the Trans-Alaskan pipeline, they had to do
Mm-hmm.
that. They're now, taking apart the tundra,
Mm-hmm.
and that was Obama's work,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. Well, his everything on the table platform was the one thing he was telling the truth about when it came to oil.
Right, right. Which is incredibly ridiculous. We have long overused that particular
Resort.
resource, and there are so many other options out here that we can use to our benefit and the planet's benefit.
Oh,
And
that brings me to another question. What about the
right.
Green New Deal? What's your take on it?
Um, it's a watered down version of our Green New Deal.
I meant yours, the Green New Deal that the Green
Oh,
Party.
okay, okay. I'm a proponent of all
And then you
parts of
can
it.
contrast it if you like with the Democrat.
Oh my gosh, that's a whole other show, bro. That's a whole other show. Um,
We could do the brief version.
yeah, yeah. I think that infrastructure development and just taking a better stock at how we use energy and for what reasons
Mm.
is like the underlying aspect of it. You know?
See, when I read both Green New Deals, I notice that the Green Party's definitely has more of it definitely takes scale into account
Yes, gotta be the
of
scale.
how they're working it.
Hmm.
They're not saying, "All right, we're just going to put solar panels and everyone's going to, have 4 cars in the driveway again, and it's going to be the 1955, commercial for the new microwave oven, and the world's or the 1968 World's Fair, and we're going to see all these amazing technology. There's going to be
That's right.
some real changes in the way we access
Right.
energy, use
Yeah.
energy, and
Yes.
and what we define as being, useful and important.
Yes.
Whereas
It is a complete culture change. Yes.
the Democrats is, all right, you don't have to change. There's that 1970s story of reuse, reduce, recycle. That's out. We're just going to put massive amounts of solar, batteries from anywhere we can source the materials we need,
Hmm.
and somehow technology is going to solve all the mess we make while we do this.
Right.
And I'm curious, do you think that the Green Party can sell their scale-based Green New Deal effectively now that the Democrats have totally muddied the whole issue.
I think there is a need for contrast. Like we have to make sure that when we're talking about what we offer, what we've been offering for decades now about revamping our whole approach to energy production and energy use, and just make sure that there's a strong line between what the Democrats are professing in terms of what we should do. When we've been talking about low impact means to get around from bicycling and walking and carpooling, and I mean all those different things as things that we have talked about before, in addition to relying on non-gas powered vehicles. My concern is, with the production of lithium and all the mining and all of the devastation it does in that respect. I mean, we have the ability to really explore, other alternatives of energy production as well. So we're not just beholden to, hybrid vehicles or electric vehicles. There are other things that we can be considering. I really would like to see another age in this country where we were considered innovative. I wouldn't say all, but quite a bit of the innovation in respect to energy production and waste reusing and all of that stuff comes from outside of the country. And the World Economic Forum, constantly putting up all these different tidbits about what other countries are doing in order to maintain a sense of responsibility to the environment. And we're falling behind. On every possible indicator, the United States has fallen well below most other industrial nations and so-called civilized nations. So yeah, I mean, it's really we are missing the opportunity to really be a strong proponent of a more responsible, ethically sound way of living in this country by not paying attention to, especially the aspects of the Green New Deal. I think that could really set us apart in generations to come. So.
Well, I think we have to. I mean, there's just no way around it. We have to change the way we're using resources. I mean, no one can continue to consume at the rate we're consuming.
No.
I mean, even
knowing that we are the largest. I mean, the U.S. military is the largest polluter in the world.
It's not only just that pollution. It's just the consumption.
And it's the consumption. Yeah, we waste more than what we use here, to the tune of 10 times at least, I believe.
I think I read a book once about food waste, and this is a few years ago, and it was something like 30 times the world average on food waste alone.
Yes,
our food waste literally could feed all of Africa and much more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, I know other countries have, done very creative things about making sure that there are no, heaps of food in the trash can every night after, restaurants close, so that food goes back to, different community groups and food kitchens, soup kitchens, and that sort of thing, to be redistributed amongst people who are in need. And I would love to see more of that here in Connecticut, because we have food banks, we have a good, system of reaching low-income earners, or just people who are struggling. You don't even have to be low-income to visit a soup kitchen. I have visited a soup kitchen with my son many a time, so we needed a hot meal. But we need to do more in terms of waste reduction. And recycling and all of that.
We're getting dangerously close to those 70s terms.
That's okay. I was born in 77, so
I was born in the 80s. So
all right, I got 3 years on you, brother. So I
was a child of Reagan. First
memories. Oh, you poor soul.
It was a good time to be alive. You knew who you hated? The Russians. You knew who you hated? The Russians.
Did he though?
Oh yeah,
everybody hated the Russians. Everybody hated the Russians. But Brooklyn was horrendous because we were in the middle of the crack and cocaine epidemic.
Well, that was terrible, and our current president was put. I mean, it's ironic that no one talks about Joe Biden being an absolute nightmare.
Yes.
During the early 80s, so far that even Reagan couldn't stomach his outrageous proposals.
Yeah, he was pretty far right.
He's always been right.
Yeah, pretty far.
I mean,
Yeah.
even when he comes to the left, supposedly it's barely. I mean, his student loan program, I think, is going to fail miserably,
It will.
and it's
It will.
designed to.
So, what I've noticed in as adults, because you really pay attention to these
Mhm.
things when you're adult. You don't really notice, and you shouldn't have to be bothering with um,
I don't know.
national politics when you're a child. You're trying to live your life when you're a child.
No, not my
Um,
experience.
Not mine as well, but I'm hopeful that
Uh,
others have that experience. I
I
don't
spent
know
a lot of time with my
what's happening.
grandparents, and I remember being like 6 and watching the whole Ollie North thing
Oh
and
God, yeah,
Vietnam.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But I
yeah.
was 6. Most 6-year-olds didn't. They were watching like Sesame Street, and I'm like,
Yeah, yeah. So in my household, it was more of the conversation between adults. The
mm,
hush conversations about what was going on in the world
mm,
and how it was going to affect us, and that's how I got exposed to it.
mhm.
But this thinking back to you know my first exposures to a world that wasn't that didn't want to believe that I was even human. That
Mm.
didn't want to accept me, that had no desire to see me prosper. That hit me in my teens. You know
Well, could understand that. I mean,
So yeah,
Reagan was not exactly the world's most racially friendly individual, and his policies showed it.
yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Unfortunately,
I remember the 1980s. For some odd reason, it always sticks out in my head that the 1980s were a big time for the evangelicals to run around claiming that everyone was a Satanist. You remember
yeah.
that? you know,
I remember
it's,
like the late '70s, early '80s. Like there was like a Satan panic type thing. I mean, all the movies were about
mm,
the
eh,
Exorcist and all. My mother told me she was pregnant while she was watching that. I said, well, that explains a lot. But it goes in waves. And then we had what in the '80s we had aliens. So
yeah,
there
that
was
was the
always this
later.
thing. You
But I
know,
mean, I remember that part being really there and being really important, and there was always an underlying thing. There was always this like dark, shadowy figure they needed to fight. That
right?
they needed, and
An empire always needs an enemy.
mm,
It always needs an enemy so they can justify atrocities abroad as well as at home. Empire always needs an enemy. So that shadowy figure does come in handy.
so I was wondering. I mean, and I remember that being a very, very, very important to the evangelical crowd, which really was ginning up, the drug war on drugs, the morality, and that
Hmm.
bled over into the gay rights movement,
Yeah,
especially when AIDS came about.
right.
I remember Nancy Reagan basically saying that, well, it doesn't affect us,
That's right.
so who cares?
That's right.
So, so I'm kind of curious. What is your take on Biden so far? Has he shed any of his old stripes?
I don't believe so. I think there's a tendency amongst Democrats and perhaps Republicans too, where especially if they're running for the same office, maybe
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's just a backroom deal or just an understanding. Like, okay, I'll go in this case, and then I'll keep the seat warm for you. I think that along the lines they were keeping the seat warm for Biden because he felt entitled to
Oh,
becoming
he definitely
president of
felt
the Republic.
entitled.
Yeah.
I
Um.
mean,
I
he basically said
really.
that in 2008.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so did Hillary. So I'm not. I'm not.
I don't know. Who did you think was more racist in 2008, Hillary or Biden? He had the famous, "Well, you're a well dressed, clean individual," to Obama during that first Iowa debate, and
Correct.
and Clinton had the musings about maybe he'll get shot like JFK, and
Mm-hmm.
and then she had those outwardly racist ads at the end linking
Mm-hmm.
him to terrorism.
Right? And then offering him to work as his to apply for the position of vice presidency versus
Mm-hmm.
presidency, and he had to remind her, no, I'm running for president, not vice president. I would say for me they were equal. Just one was more open and blatant about it, than the other. I think Hillary was able to polish off her stuff a lot better than Biden. And Biden actually, had this reputation, continues to have this reputation of being rough around the edges, no filter. That great uncle that you keep in the back room. I mean, he really digs into that persona. and
He
loves it
does. I mean,
and
that's
runs with
supposed
it.
to be his truth-telling persona.
No, it's a lot of BS.
Oh, it is.
A
I
man
mean,
like him is equally scary to me as Trump, um,
I mean,
because the
I'm not really.
level of disregard. This is my interpretation,
Oh,
right? I mean, you know, Trump has a lot of. I mean, this is a clinician in me, like a lot of deep psych issues, right, that haven't
mhm.
been attended to, that his parents and all the adults around him did a disservice from childhood, right? I
Mhm.
recognize that. But as an adult, he needs to take ownership for his own individual actions, right? Which were horrendous in so many, and also quite discriminatory. I'm thinking of the Central Park Five, that full page ad that he had taken out, demonized them before they even got a trial, all of those different things. Like he's never been interested in black and brown or anyone outside of his circle's life, never mind his
but
own.
was it as
Um,
bad as the 1994 crime bill?
no,
I mean, it's racist. I mean, it's blatantly racist. But to me, that's more like comparing Birth of a
no, no.
Nation to like Hitler actually doing
Right.
it.
No, no, the
And
crime bill institutionalized bias against black and brown people. Absolutely, absolutely. And that rests solely in Biden's hand. I mean, that's part of his legacy.
well, I mean,
Agreed.
and Clinton.
And yes,
Clinton
and
spent.
Clinton.
I mean, Biden tells the story that Clinton spent many an hour telling him that he wanted a tough crime bill, and this is
Mm-hmm,
after he had the Ricky Rector execution,
mm-hmm,
which he did basically because he lost what I think it was in 73 or 77
mm-hmm.
one election, and he never wanted to lose again, so he's going to be tough on crime. I mean,
Yes.
the guy literally says to the guards, "I'll leave my donut. I'll see you later."
Mm,
I mean, he definitely had the IQ of a 12-year-old at that
mm,
point or less after he shot himself in the head. So,
yeah,
and
yeah.
Biden tells a story that he got phone call after phone call from Clinton saying, "I want this done. I need this bill.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be our legacy."
All right. It sure was, but not in the way that he expected.
Well, I think it's been really good for them for the most part. Media doesn't talk about it too much.
No, because he had the charisma.
Mm-hmm.
Clinton had the charisma that Biden will never have. He
Right.
was on the Arsenio Hall show playing a saxophone.
Badly.
Fairly decent looking guy. So he made the rounds. So he got away with quite a bit, quite a
So
bit.
how are you going to attack like those kind of deep structural biases in federal law? I mean, it's pretty hard, even though as a governor, but you can do some things around the edges at least, or
Correct. I
even
never work on
deeper.
the defensive. I always work on the offense. I mean, my
So
understanding
that
is to
means you're going to
really
just say, "Forget it. We're just going to not follow those rules."
no, sir.
I would
It's more of
I would do
it's
that. I mean, I would just say, "Yeah, we're just not going to follow the crime bill. It just does. It stops here."
there more there are more productive ways to going about it besides being like hardline about it. In practice as well as when you're sharing.
I kind
Um,
of like a hard line on that one myself.
well, yeah, I mean, I'm
I mean,
not
some people
phrasing
might
it the
say
way
it's
I want to phrase it.
grandstanding, but
To it is to know my personality,
yeah.
to understand exactly my approach.
Oh, I'm not saying that you're not going to do anything. I'm just saying that my personal take is that that's something that I would take a very hard line, and I would say,
Oh, of course,
take me to court, because if we can take it to court, we can maybe get it,
get some
over,
attraction on it. Absolutely.
overruled, but not with
Hmm.
this SCOTUS. I mean, this
Right.
SCOTUS is that's it'll come back harder.
It will come back harder. Yeah, yeah. Um, so it's not my desire just to placate folk.
Hmm.
It is more my desire to look at the actual situation and the variables and who's affected. So you have to come with me. I had a supervisor that taught me one of the greatest lessons. Um, when you're faced with a challenge, come with three solutions. You're not just going to walk in my office and ask me, what do I do now?
Hmm.
You know. So I approach that in everything that I do. When I'm faced with a challenge, I need to come up with three solutions because it allows me to look at all sides of the issue and understand where everyone is coming from. I can
Hmm.
still keep my credibility. I can still keep my integrity. I would never jeopardize what I believe in,
Hmm.
but I just want to make sure that everyone understands what's at stake here. You know. So I plan to be very meticulous in the way I execute all of those different items that I had shared with you in my first 100 days, as well as all of my different priorities. And I wanted to make sure it is as transparent as possible. Everybody know what's going to happen, but it's going to get done. You know.
Well, that's good. I mean, there's always room to negotiate and work around the edges with these, but I'm really not sure in this case that we have much room to work with on the federal level. I mean, other than you
Yeah.
either follow it or you don't. It's kind of a
Yeah.
binary decision.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's always, was it easier to ask for forgiveness than for
Forgiveness.
permission?
Yeah, I mean, but I mean,
Hmm.
we need to get that bill up in front of the Supreme Court because it's never really been challenged properly.
Well, maybe a Supreme Court with two or more justices that are a little bit more centrist in their
Definitely.
beliefs.
I
Because
mean,
even with the most recent Supreme Court justice, all of the rulings are going to sway towards those who are financing the others.
oh,
So,
sure. I mean,
yeah.
they're in a minority. No one's going to. I mean, the only thing you can hope to do is try and show how racially biased the law is.
Which is what served us well in 1965 and the years
Mhm.
prior. You
I
know.
mean, yeah, I mean, that's about it. I mean,
Hmm.
but the question is, would that sway a guy like Clarence Thomas? It doesn't seem to.
I think the only thing that would sway Clarence Thomas is knowing that he'll be unseated.
Mm, mm,
You know,
no.
I think that's the only thing that would sway him.
True. I mean, he's for a guy who didn't talk the first 20 years, he's certainly making a lot of
Sure does.
waves now.
Sure does. Sure does.
I mean, he was the phantom on the court. They said he never asked questions, never barely wrote any dissents.
Yep. Yep.
Now all of a sudden he's writing major opinions,
Right. That's right.
asking almost. I think on the abortion he asked almost a third of the questions.
Hmm.
So I mean, I would think that he would have to be at least cognizant of the fact that racial bias is a real thing on this level.
True. I do believe that sometimes certain people, when they get in certain areas of power and influence,
I know, but I
they
mean,
think that they're immune. Right.
but getting a free pass is a lot different than not being there. You know,
I agree.
I
I
mean,
agree.
you still know that deep down, if something changes, that free pass goes away.
At any time, it could be retracted.
That's right.
But I do believe that for some people,
Yeah, I
they're
mean,
not even conceiving that. They just figure that that they have the golden ticket. That there's no way it's going to apply to them. But it always happens.
I think that unfortunately is that. I think you have hit him on the nail correctly about his personality.
Hmm.
Instead of seeing how deeply flawed some of the decisions they've made recently are.
Hmm. Like loving versus loving, which would have affected his relationship with his current spouse.
Right.
He's tiptoed around that completely.
I think he's
Yeah.
crazy. I think he's crazy enough to go after that one.
Again, he may believe that their relationship. I mean, they don't have any children, so he may believe that he's unaffected by that, and he
Mm-hmm.
may even structure some language in it that makes sure that his marriage is not invalidated. So,
It's going to be hard, though. I mean, if they invalidate all those marriages,
hmm.
you're going to have a huge problem. If they put it back to the states, you're going to have a huge problem with the clauses about each state recognizing another state's
Correct.
marriage. I mean,
Which
so
was why it wasn't on the state level to begin with. That's why it was pushed up to the feds
I
because
know.
there was just too many discrepancies.
First of all, you
Absolutely.
got the major problem is we get to a big tit for tat
Hmm.
with each other. And next thing you know, Texas doesn't want to have any gay marriages, so Connecticut and New York decide that they're not going to honor Texas driver's licenses. You can't drive there anymore.
That's right, because that's exactly what would happen.
And then they do the same thing to us, and and then what
Hmm.
is it? Half the country can't drive, and the other half states. I mean,
Hmm.
that's why we created these clauses so these idiots couldn't do this.
But that you're exactly right. I mean, that is not something that is in dreamland somewhere. It could very well happen. I mean, Texas has talked about secession for years. I mean, they could
Oh,
have enough ammunition to say that we want to be our own complete entity, and even come up with their own form of a militia to guard their borders.
Well, they have it
would
already.
be a
It's the
nightmare.
National Guard. They already
Yeah.
have the militia.
Yep. It would
And as
be a nightmare.
it would be. But I don't think they're going to do it because they take too much federal government money.
They do. They do. Unless they found some other resource, partnering with Russia or somebody, there's no way.
But I could see the driver's license then. And they'd have a very good case because, you've put it into states' rights and you've opened the door.
Right.
And now you'd have to apply. And it would be brilliant, because now we'd all have to, if we want to go to Texas, we'd all have to apply for a special Texas voucher. And that would charge
a
us,
voucher or like a mini visa. Yep.
Charge us like $200 a pop.
That's right. That would be a good money-making vehicle right there.
That's right. So what do you think of what happened with Texas moving and Florida moving immigrants into Martha's Vineyard?
They spent more money doing that than any money they could have gained. I think it was a publicity stunt.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel for the families that had gone through the process, had been processed through local authorities, and then tricked essentially into being sent elsewhere. I think it's a good case for human trafficking, and I really hope that the feds really take a deeper look into.
But do you think it showed? But do you think it showed, unfortunately, what they wanted to show about the liberal Americans in the Northeast?
Maybe not. Maybe not the effect that they wanted. I mean, essentially, Martha's Vineyard turned itself into a depot. You know what I mean?
Well, I heard they got them out pretty quickly. It definitely looked like a not in my backyard kind of situation.
It sure did, in a very nice Martha Vineyard's way. They really did. As much as they possibly can in record time. Honestly.
And they sent them to Connecticut of all many of them.
What I think of
what I thought was stupid was
families that were put in this position just so these two governors could make a point.
I know. I thought was stupid on the part of the Massachusetts, Connecticut, is I would have said, no, you can send them anytime.
Mm-hmm.
We have more than enough room.
Mm-hmm.
And that would have just totally destroyed their argument. What are they going to say? They're going to fly them up?
Yeah, on the taxpayer dime. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what.
But anyway, but it doesn't matter because I would fast track them. I would figure out some way of fast tracking them through citizenship, and I would turn them into productive employees and part of my economy and say thank you.
I agree because people who are non-residents, never mind non-citizens, still contribute to the economy. They just don't get the benefit of it in form of investing into Social Security or for their own selves or any of it. So it's very, very possible and plausible to.
If I had to create some kind of state visa system for them, I would.
Hey, absolutely. There is an organization called City Seed down in New Haven, which has a community kitchen, and they have all these migrant women and some men who have an interest in cooking and having their own business, and they have a catering business.
Right.
So you go on their website and you can order food from all over the planet.
That's brilliant. That is a brilliant thing, and that's what I would have.
Absolutely amazing, and they're learning English and other life skills that they may need to survive. I mean, beyond that, and just learning how to thrive in the neighborhood and take care of their families, and at the same time earning a livable wage. It is phenomenal
and benefiting the overall community.
Very doable, and the whole community benefits.
And that's what I would have done. I would have made them look like idiots and said, "Sorry, we'll take them. We know how to handle them."
I reject, and I've said this many times, I reject the myth of scarcity. It is the basis of our economic system that there's not enough to go around, but it's more than enough for everyone to go around. We've been fed a lie.
There is scarcity, but the problem is that is it what we really think the scarcity is? I mean, is it?
Some resources are finite, right? Some resources are definitely finite, but I'm thinking in terms of money.
Oh, well, that's imaginary. We just can print that up and use it however we want. And as long as we have something to soak up the excess, we don't have inflation or any of those problems.
That's right.
And this would soak up those excess funds.
It would.
Because they would be paying for housing. They'd be paying for transportation. They'd be paying taxes instead of not paying taxes.
That's right.
Which means that you'd increase your tax base. The only problem I see why Democrats don't like it is that secretly ever since the 1990s when they started to talk about building walls
Mm-hmm.
on the southern border is that they saw the party was becoming too brown for their liking.
Mm.
I mean, do you remember around? I guess it's around '97 we start seeing this hard push by. I think Clinton did in his last term. He did at least 2 speeches about that were hard on immigration being too much.
Yeah, I remember that. I do
And
remember
then
that.
Dianne Feinstein came out and had a
Mm-hmm.
clip where she's talking about, oh, we need a wall or a fence or something. They never said
Right.
wall. They always said boundary. And they always
Boundary.
kept it, they always kind of thought of it as like the neighborly chain link fence.
Right. Right. Where you can see to the other side, but you can't cross.
That's, I mean, that's what affected their whole problem with. I mean, this wall seemed too medieval for them, but a nice, maybe some shrubs.
Well, I always wonder, like when folks start to hardline like that, regardless of what the issue is and who they're appealing to. Like, are they trying to appeal to their donor base, and that's why, and that kind of language is more attractive to them? That's what I wonder when I hear that.
Well, I think so, but I mean, I think that deep down it was telling the anxiety of the American of the whiteness of the Democratic Party disappearing.
Right. Well, whiteness in itself is disappearing. Whiteness is the only condition that needs to add to itself every once in a while in order to exist, right? So, Italians were not considered white, Irish were not considered white, Polish
Oh
were not
no,
considered white, but they were pulled into the fold because it was necessary, right? To
I'm 2 out
maintain
of
that.
3. I'm 2 out of 3 who named in the wrong category. Actually, what they said about Irish was truly diabolical in the 1850s.
Mm. Was it a swarthy? What
No,
was it?
it was that Irish were just like black people, but turned inside out.
Oh my God.
That was it.
Yeah.
That was what they
But
said.
notice the reference, just like black people, because black people weren't considered
Well,
human,
oh,
right?
but Irish were always not considered human
Right.
in Europe. They were the
Mm-hmm.
problem group.
Mm-hmm.
Poles were a little better at certain times, but when they came to
Mm-hmm.
America, anyone from Southern Europe was not white.
Right. Was not
And
considered
Eastern
white.
Europe.
Right.
Italians, Moldovians,
Right.
Romanians.
Right. Definitely not the Roma. No, they
No.
had to be acculturated into the group. And I noticed that I think in the most recent census, they're trying to see if they can process or add Middle Easterners and North Africans to the category of white.
Guess we're too low on the birth. I guess Grassman
Yes.
is right.
Yes. Yes. It is the only caste system that allows for that in order to keep it standing.
Well, it definitely shows that most white people have a sincere fear of anything other than whiteness.
Yes.
Being in power.
Because it's been taught.
I don't know. I don't know if we teach it anymore. I think we just expect it.
No, the expectation is already kind of ingrained in every institution.
It's so
that we do
long that
business
white people just feel entitled. I mean, that's the true entitlement. Is that white people feel like me? We feel like, oh, we should see another white face in a place of power or a voice of, and we don't want to
white
see
male
that.
face in particular.
White male. Well, we're allowing some white women.
Mm-hmm. But you're right. It's an allowance. I'm putting you here for figurehead purposes only.
If they say the right things,
believe in you. Right.
If they say the right things, they gotta toe the line a little more.
Yes.
No radicals allowed.
Yes. No radicals allowed. That's right.
We're in serious trouble if we don't start really affecting that. We need more people of color. We need more diversity in our government.
We need more people of conscience who really understand what's at stake. All of us. All of us.
And we need more foster parents that are good. Not the. I hear so many bad things about the foster care system.
Yeah, unfortunately, there are people who take advantage of that.
That's a funding problem. Too many kids, too few social workers because we don't want to pay because that's where we cut every time. And then we say, well, why do we have all these upset kids? Well, what do you think?
Yeah. If we had reached the parents beforehand, maybe we would have had a chance.
Because you don't reach the kid at 5, you reach him at 15, and now it's too late to really do anything before they blow up and do some
Mhm.
massive terrible thing out of anger. And what else was I going to get to? Oh, but I wouldn't lose all hope about being a write-in candidate.
Oh no, I
Look,
haven't lost
look at
any
look
hope
at look at
whatsoever.
Buffalo.
Yeah, writing candidates actually have done quite well, historically considering. So
I know,
my
but I mean,
intention is just to keep in the fight. I have no desire of leaving before November 8th, and I
and no one
want people
should.
to know that exactly, and I want people to know that um, they're the expectation, because in Connecticut it has often been white male at the helm.
I always think
You
of
know?
Joe Lieberman
Yeah, yeah,
to this
yeah,
day, and
yeah.
now he's off at some Republican donor law office,
I know.
and his daughter tried to run for Democratic senator down in Georgia.
Yeah, it's just the whole mess. You know it. You know it. But people like me need to see people like me
Oh,
as well as others.
we all have
You
to
know, I
see
had a
people.
gentleman that I was doing door to door with, and his wife was standing there. She said, "Go ahead, ask her the question." I said, "What question?" And he said, "Well, why haven't you run for something a little lower on a totem pole, like maybe mayor?" I said, "Why?" He's like, "Well,
What?
get your start lower." I said, "I'm more qualified than the two other guys. Why? Why would I?" And he didn't even think that, you know. He didn't
Wow.
think
I
he just
mean,
automatically thought that I should essentially settle for something a little less just to get my name out there for
that's
name
a question
recognition.
never even thought about. I mean, I guess maybe he was thinking strategically long term.
Yeah,
If you're being super charitable to him,
I want to give
but
him the benefit of the doubt
but
that
I
that's
don't
what he
think
was
that
thinking.
was the case. I don't think that. I mean,
Hmm.
most of our politicians. I mean, this myth about these politicians being super smart and super this, but they're good at one thing: connecting with others and networking.
Yes, yes.
Those two
Not
things they
about
do.
intelligence, none
God,
of
if
that
that
sort
was
of
the
thing.
case, Joe wouldn't have passed the. He would have flunked.
Hooked and pass muster.
Yeah.
I am exceedingly grateful because I do consider this a privilege. To be able to speak to people and understand where they're coming from and what they're looking for, right? And I don't necessarily stand only for the middle class, because that's what the argument usually is. That they try to tailor the message, or
Oh
towards
well.
the middle class. I'm actually for the working class,
Hmm.
the underemployed, the strategically excluded.
Well, the
Consider the
problem.
disabled, the sex workers, all of that sort of thing.
Oh,
That's where my
that gets
loyalty
me to one
lies.
more question.
What's up?
Would you be willing to decriminalize sex work in the state of Connecticut?
Yes. And provide resources for men and women and children who are engaged in sex work but are needing
Yeah.
guidance, or even looking for support in all other ways. Because
Well,
I
obviously,
wouldn't say a lot of
children.
them, but some people, a lot of it is children. Some people are looking for a way out of sex work, but those who are it is a job. It pays. um, for those who are there, they still deserve to have,
Yeah.
equal access to healthcare, including, emotional support, mental health support, that sort of thing.
I mean, it's kind of ironic that one of the most closed off religious groups in Nevada, the
Hmm.
Mormons, will legalize sex work because they saw the profit motive functioning in their resort towns. Because let's face it, Nevada only had like two things going for it in the '60s. We detonated 250 nukes in the area, and the casinos.
Yeah. Aren't
I
they
mean,
like? Isn't that region of the country like the largest consumers of porn anyway?
I don't know.
So
I've
it
never.
makes good sense.
I thought that was like Virginia. I heard.
Oh, I heard out west, but we could both be on the right
We'll
track
have to
with it.
look that up and find out.
I
But
will definitely do that.
but what I was saying is that they only had like these two resources, like so they had to cater to getting as many people as they possibly could in, so they had to give up on one of their values to do it. Plus,
Mm,
the mob wanted it. I mean, let's
well,
face it, modern Nevada is not unentangled from the mafia yet.
yeah, I mean the mafia has gone legit in Connecticut. Well, the
Oh,
Northeast. They've infiltrated other areas that made
Well, they always have to go legit. That's how they clear their other money through the
clear
legit
their
business.
money. Yeah.
And that's why they needed the Nevada so much. They had to take all the profits from drugs in the Northeast,
Mm-hmm.
funnel it through the casinos with all the cash there.
Yep.
And the prostitution was perfect because that's also usually another cash business. You want that.
It is a cash cow. Yep.
So
Definitely.
most places don't take credit cards on the
Mm-hmm.
street.
Well,
So
you
I was
never
just,
know. I haven't heard from
but
any
now they do
folk out there who
at their
take the
legalized
square.
brothels. They do.
Oh, really? Well,
Yeah,
look at that. Look at that.
But I was just saying that. So I mean, this is
I would legalize sex work. Yeah, absolutely.
We have to. I mean, we have to. Just face facts. It's another pointless war that isn't being won.
Yeah. This is true. And war, like I said earlier, war on concepts don't ever win.
Well, I mean, the war on poverty was working pretty well until Nixon got in. That was like the one thing we were actually doing pretty well with,
Yeah. Well, I credit that to the people on the front line that actually.
It was, but I mean, but Lyndon B. Johnson at least broke the funds out, got it to where it needed to go, and started to do it. I mean, as racist and contradictory as he was as a human being, I mean,
he did a lot of good in that respect. Absolutely.
I think it was only just to prove that he was better than the Kennedys, because he was in a perpetual fight to prove that he was more worthy of being president than they were.
I see.
Oh yeah, he used to have his aides like measure everything they did, and so that he could come back and try and do something, one up them.
Well,
it worked out.
I guess so.
But then Nixon just killed it with block granting everything and destroying it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was getting me to probably my final question, because I'm pretty sure that we're almost 2 hours. I don't think you want to go too much longer than that, unless you do. I could talk for a long time.
Oh, well, so can I, but I'm just, having this day job just really complicates matters, So I get it. But what is your final question?
But so what are you going to do about so you got the round table, the room at the table policy, and it's really great. It's got a lot of great things from infrastructure and this, but how are you going to affect like the changes that we need socially? Are you going to, I mean, I think we have a very deep divide right now.
Yes.
Between, people that only vote blue, people that only vote red, people that only vote this. I mean, are you going to try and open up like maybe something similar to like Desmond Tutu did in South Africa, like and start doing a lot of these town halls that gets them to talk, makes them feel like they're being heard and listened to.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. One thing that I've learned, especially with Black and Brown communities in the state, is that they listen better and more available when you are present. So if you come to their events, answer their questions on their own turf, they're more likely to give you a little time, right? So in my line of work, I'm not afraid to go where people live, no matter how downtrodden or destitute where the area is. I'll meet you there. I'll meet you wherever you're comfortable. So that's how I would go about making myself available to people, so they get to know who I am and what I stand for.
Oh, that's good, because I think that's a big problem with our current political system. Every 4 years or 2 years, depending on what part of the government you're in, the guy shows up at your door, basically expects you to pay fealty by voting for him, because you were just marginally less bad than the other guy who he's told you was going to end the world. And then, you don't see him for 4 years or 2 years, and he comes back and you ask him what he does, and he just blows you off on that kind of question.
That's right. What I have to offer is the always being there. When I ran for Congress in 2018, I kept my Facebook page up and running and kept it the same name, Michelle Bicking for Connecticut. So folk knew that I was still here, still out here doing.
Which congressional race were you in?
District 1 against Joe Courtney.
Oh.
I technically came in second. The Republican dropped out.
Well, that was great. I mean,
for a first run? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I
was thinking of what?
Party? Yeah.
Were you going for the House? Obviously, because you're in a district. The House. So that means District 6 went to, what was her name that year?
Johanna Hayes.
Yes. And she's been I think, a huge disappointment.
She could have done more, but they all can. It was interesting. I was at a town hall-esque meeting of disability rights advocates in the state,
Hmm.
and they've invited everyone, which is one of the rare occasions where people from so-called third parties can shine.
Hmm.
So it was very interesting when the host called me up. She read my entire resume,
Oh, wow.
and she said she wanted to let people know who this woman was. And when I'm sitting up there out of the corner of my eye, I see Johanna with a big old smile,
Hmm.
you know, and that smile was for me.
Oh, well, that's good. I just, I was just wondering how well she did because you never hear of her. She keeps nationally, she keeps a low profile.
Very low profile. Yeah, she'll sign off on different measures, and
And that's
she'll make her
usually
public appearances every so often, but not as much as when she was campaigning.
a sign that someone is basically relegated themselves to a backbench position
Perhaps, perhaps. Um,
and is
but
waiting and
it
is
was
paying.
it was really I really appreciated that.
Oh, I would too.
It
I would
it
too.
didn't because as a woman of color, you don't really see yourselves in places like
Mhm.
this, being on the other
No,
side of the microphone. So regardless of where we stand politically, I will always be grateful for her for giving me that sense of I see you.
well, it's very important that you see each other, and hopefully she sees you still.
I'm not going anywhere.
That's right.
Again, go back to my what I was saying earlier is that one of the distinctions between myself and other candidates is that I don't just show up when it's opportune. I'm here all the time.
I think that's the big problem with our political system is that the politicians have stepped out. I mean, say what you will about Biden. He's very smart. He knows that by keeping his presence in Delaware so
Yes,
visual and so
yes,
prominent,
yes.
everyone knows who he is. You can go to
That's
the
right.
store and see him. Ice
Hmm.
cream place, apparently, too.
Oh, he loves his ice cream. What is that?
I don't know.
Hey, it's his stick. Whoever told him to run with it,
Was smart.
kudos to them. Yes, yes.
But what I was saying is that we don't have that. We tried it a little in my district, District
Yeah.
19, with Anthony Delgado,
Hmm.
who's from Schenectady originally,
Okay.
and then went down to New York City and became a lawyer and went out to LA, tried a rap career for a little while. That
Oh,
didn't work. But he would come around and he would do more town halls. But he wasn't a big guy for answering too many questions. I know I went to a couple. He would answer very specific questions, not the hard ones, the easy, the soft puff piece questions,
hmm.
and then get in the car and run off to his next event.
Okay.
And I think that when we do that all the time, we lose faith in the politicians. We start saying, well,
Yeah.
they're only
Yeah.
going to tell us what we want to hear.
Yeah.
And then 4 months later, they're going to sign all these other bills that don't help us.
Right.
And we're going to go. So, I think we have to really rebuild that. I think it'll take governors, especially, to start rebuilding that trust.
Yes.
And they'll have to do it by,
One home at a time.
one
In
town
some
at a
cases.
time.
One town at a time, one home at a time. It
And it's
really.
not going to be just, committee meetings and talking to people and getting them to talk. You're going to have to do some real legislation,
Yeah, and the one thing that bothers me, especially here in Connecticut, is that Democrats tend to be very city oriented, and Republicans know better and go out to the rural areas as well, and that's why their presence is so palpable there. You know, so I worked for the USDA for a number of years. I actually
Wow.
was a farm tech, the administrative tech in one of the area offices up in
Mhm.
Massachusetts for 2 years. So I
Wow.
know what it's like, and I always have a soft spot for farmers. I wanted to be a farmer myself. So I know I recognize how important it is to actually show up on the farm, and not just for the photo op, but to actually learn about the production, and learn what the farmer's needs are, and how was last year's yield, and what are you expecting for this
Mhm.
year, and what I mean, like really get to know them. How's the family? Where are they going to school? Oh, you had a bit. Oh, you know what I mean? People
Mhm.
really value when you take the time to get to know them, because they'll remember that.
Mhm.
you know they'll remember you.
That's true.
Um, so yeah, I mean
But
that's something that I am very attuned to doing. I'm not afraid of being in places where I don't, people don't look like me and I don't look like them. But I know what's at stake and I know what matters to them. And it's whatever they bring to the table as far as what matters to them. And that's what matters to me at the end of the day.
well, that's good. But what I was getting at is that it
Hmm.
seems that we have to also have the legislation policy. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you got to be willing to use these people you build up in these grassroots movements as your
Hmm.
hammer to get it
Hmm.
through.
Hmm.
And I just don't see many Democrats willing to do that.
Yeah, you don't see that very often, which is sad because the power is really in the people. And when they mobilize on a particular issue of concern, you can really get a lot of, on the ground support and you can get some things happening. If
I
it
mean,
wasn't for all the rallying around George Floyd
yeah,
after he was murdered, we wouldn't have legislation that we have related to, I mean, I really want to, one of the things on my list is to remove protections for police officers. What is that? Immunity? Um,
qualified immunity.
Qualified immunity, because it doesn't make any sense to me. It's a license to murder, and I think that law enforcement could have in their toolbox more effective ways to de-escalate situations and to work more proactively with communities than to rely on such heavy-handed approaches.
So, would you also change the way the police academy is structured?
Yes,
I
I
mean,
would make the actual duration of time longer,
long.
as well as more time focusing on what other police systems throughout the world do, like
Mental
how to
health,
really mental health, as well as
de-escalation,
identifying de-escalation techniques, absolutely,
other
and
than the
bringing in
gun.
other resources when they're beyond your ability to handle. Yeah.
I mean, what was it? I think in 2005,
Mhm.
Germany had shot their guns 85 times
Yeah,
completely, that like throughout the whole country
I believe
of
it.
60
I believe
million
it.
people. And
I believe it.
The US police was like off the charts with like
Off
200.
the chart. Yeah, we can do that in one town. We could do that in Chicago alone.
Yeah, well, Chicago has problems, and it's not that it's insurmountable, but it's just that it's
It's
just so
systemic.
corrupt in some
It's,
cases.
it's systemic. It truly is. Yeah.
They've
But
never gotten rid of the
I'm
corrupt.
I believe that, not to interrupt you, I do believe
No.
that there is more that we need to be doing in training people who have that much exposure to communities of all types,
Mhm.
um, to be better, public servants, as it were. So,
So that means you're going to discard the broken windows theory completely.
nope. I,
No, you're
I,
not.
I know I don't. When we were talking about in terms of restorative justice,
Yeah.
um, that piece I understand, but
Oh, so you're gonna so you're just gonna alter it so that it works because a lot of people like to get rid of it. I still think there's some value in the idea that yes, we need to attack these small areas
mhm.
first when they're manageable, not putting people in jail, but like
Right,
what you said, do that,
right.
and then they won't want to break the windows in their neighborhood because they actually feel attached to it,
If they feel attached to the neighborhood, yes.
and that's what we
So
have to
instead of
get.
broken windows, there'll be window boxes. You know,
New
that's
windows.
the, that's the goal. That's the
Yeah,
goal.
well, we need a lot of change, but I mean, it's not easy to get too many politicians to actually talk about real ideas.
No, that's the thing. It's easy just to talk about, the Cliff Notes version, provocative issues, and that's it. But to
I
actually go to the source of what plagues communities,
Mhm.
that's the work that some don't feel qualified to do, or
Mm.
just don't want to avoid it altogether because it's not
That's kind of the job you're signing
profitable.
up for.
It is a job I'm signing up for, and I've signed up for this job in different ways. This is just an extension of the work that I do now,
Well,
right?
yeah, I mean, I think social work is a huge part of actual governance.
Yeah,
I mean,
and systems change.
we put a lot of emphasis on like economics, and that's important,
Yes,
but it's not everything.
it's not everything.
You're not going to
It's
solve
not
it. I
everything.
mean, everything with economics.
Mm-mm.
You're not going to build too
But
many
you,
great communities using certain types of economics, especially.
but you will allow for choices to be made
Mm,
by those who live in those communities if they have access to the resource to make that happen.
maybe, maybe not. Depends on how you've shaped the economics of the community. They might have all bad choices, like we have.
I have learned to accept what people believe is good for themselves. And if they need to figure it out the hard
Well, that
way, then so be it.
well, I mean,
You
but
try to buffer it the best of your ability, but yeah.
what I was talking about is like in poverty cases, right? You know,
Hmm.
we have stacked the deck so far in advance that once you get into a hole in poverty, it's hard to dig yourself out.
Yes.
So you get arrayed a bunch of lousy choices, and we tell you, oh well, you got choices. You know, it's like in I think it was 2002.
Hmm.
You know Charles Murray?
No.
He's the president's favorite author. He's
Good to
this.
know.
Oh yeah, he's a right wing nut job.
Oh, great.
He wrote books. One was called "Coming Apart." Is his favorite book, and it's about. It essentially is the thesis is essentially that America is becoming more and more stratified, and we're being stratified based on our IQs. I swear, yeah, it's no lie. It reads like the 19th century eugenics book,
Eugenics. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
No,
And
that's not good.
unfortunately, he believes that race and IQ are intimately linked.
Of course he would. Of course. Why
And
wouldn't it?
and you know it's not it's you know he's promoted it and he uses statistics like in this one Philadelphia suburb, like in the 1970s when it was mostly white, it was, you know, low in crime. Oddly, it's white and Catholic, white Irish Catholic, which if you had said that in 1840s, they would have said it was the most crime-ridden
Most crime
community.
rating. It was a ghetto.
That's right. It was. That's where my grandparents, when they got off the boat, were stuck.
Yep.
If they decided that, if they're still deciding whether or not they should let them off the boat, or if they should figure out a way to shoot them when they,
Or sink the boat. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much.
So he's got that right, and now when it started to become more brown and diverse, you know, it starts to get more crime ridden, and this is really what our president believes. I mean, he wrote this book, but in 2001, he writes this essay for the Wall Street Journal, and I remember it because the darling of the online left, Crystal Ball, used it in her first book,
Oh yeah, crystal ball. Yeah.
hijacking the Democratic Party, reversing the apocalypse, hijacking the Democratic Party, which turned out to be just a love fest for Joe Biden.
Mm.
Quotes Charles Murray and this op-ed he wrote, and it's,
Mm.
you know, it's about UBI. We're going to give them a UBI. We
Mm-hmm.
won't let you starve, but we'll be able to, you know, tell you that you're not doing things right anyway.
Mm.
So you know, it's just this puritanical cudgel he gets to use when,
Yeah. Almost patronizing.
right. So you're not.
Paternalistic nonsense. Yeah.
Well, I mean, his whole UBI theory is really bad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he claws it all back after $30,000
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
salary. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
no one could live on it.
Nobody could live on that. No. Mm.
No, it's 10,000 he wants to give you. He actually thought in 2000 that giving people $10,000 would keep them from starving. That's after, and that's on the high end,
Yeah, I can believe
right?
it.
Of it. He also
Mm-hmm.
thought that you should take at least 5,000 of it out and put it in a year to put in your health insurance bank account
Right.
and your retirement fund.
God forbid if you get sick, you're just screwed.
Right. Because he wanted to destroy Medicare, Social Security, all of that he wanted out.
I know it.
And
I'm
so
still working on it.
this is who she writes as being this. And I thought to myself, that is so appropriate for the online left nowadays.
Wow. Wow.
You know,
Wow.
I mean, this guy just wants to just club you in the head, give you this thing that doesn't really help you, and then tell you, well, you know, it's your fault that you can't figure out how to make
Right.
$10,000 into $25,000.
I rage against such apathy and ignorance.
Is it
My life
ignorance,
is dedicated. It is absolutely ignorant.
or is it just, you know, this overwhelming belief that these people are just screwing up so badly, and other people can do it, so it's their fault, you know? They
I
always
mean,
pick out
we
like
live
these
in
two
an age
tokens.
where people should not be ignorant, right? You
Mhm.
know, you have so much information available that if you took the time to research, you know, one of the things that I do not do anymore is teach people about why I deserve to be, you know, human and to have the rights as anybody else. Go and do your own research about the transatlantic slave trade and all. Do your own research about Watts and all the riot. Do that on your own time. I'm not here to school you just because, right? So it really truly bothers me, and I do wonder that again, like when some certain people get to a certain stage in their life and a certain amount of money in their bank account, if they remove themselves from the equation along, you know, getting themselves educated about what people are actually needing. And yes, in some light, it shouldn't be ignorance because, you know, there is willful ignorance, and then there's just downright stupidity, right?
Well, to me, it seems that they always look for these cherry picked cases. You
Yeah,
know, like
yeah,
we'll see in the news the girl who lives in the subway but goes to Harvard, and there's like one
right.
of the
Like
there's
she
one
can
of
do it.
yeah,
Anybody can.
that's right.
Right, right.
Well,
Silly.
look at all the adversity, and she never asked for a handout. So you,
Hmm. It's foolishness.
oh, it
Knowing
is.
very well that does not happen for a vast majority of people, and that is truly exception. I
Oh,
truly get that. Now, my battery is going to die,
oh
sir. Is there anything else I can do or be of
no,
service?
you just plug yourself. Just
The plug is too short, unfortunately.
well, no, plug yourself as in push whatever Michelle Louise Bickle
Oh,
Bicking for Congress. I mean,
for whatever I should.
for
Yeah,
governor this time. Now I got
for the
Congress
governor
stuck in my head.
this time. Well, you know, again, I'm always grateful for the opportunity to connect with anyone, regardless of where they are, Kentucky, New York,
I
you
live
know,
there.
wherever, because it gives me a chance to, yeah, yeah, absolutely. It gives me a chance to,
I don't
because I
recommend
actually did connect
Kentucky.
with somebody in Kentucky, and I did
I don't
connect with
recommend it.
somebody in Oregon.
Mhm.
You never know where people find you or learn about you and want to, you know, see exactly what you stand for. So I
Well, I think
invite anyone to reach out to me and learn about what my vision for a future in Connecticut would look like and how it includes everyone, not just those who are well off and well heeled, that the future belongs to all of us. So
well, thank you for coming on, and I think it was a great um, platform you have.
thank you.
Let's hope to push it. I mean, because we
Yes,
need
we
more
will.
platforms. I mean, you should basically be like a template for other green parties around the Northeast, especially
I'm honored. Thank you so much for
because
coming.
we're all facing those same issues
Yeah, we
in
are.
the Northeast, and we need some viable solutions other than we're going to build a tech plant over here,
Mm-hmm.
and that doesn't really solve it.
That's right.
But thank you and good night.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. Good night, everybody.
Good night.